Yes, we're back again. It's the cornerback rankings 2024 for the draft. Good to see you again, Mike. We're doing a two days in a row here for us. Goodness, we're really firing into it now.
Well, it's that time of year, and you run out of time pretty quickly. It gets to the point where you're doing podcasts on the afternoon of a work day, which, to be honest, I don't have any qualms about doing that at all. So yeah,
No,
let's get stuck into some defensive backs. I believe, Thomas, you want to talk to us about?
yeah, absolutely. We're going to do pure cornerbacks first. I've got them ranked 1 to 6, my top six. Then I've got three hybrid slot safeties that I've also ranked 1 to 3 there as well. I think that's probably the most sensible way to do it from my perspective. So I'll go from my top ranked cornerback in the class. That's going to be Ennis Rakestraw Jr. Out of Mizzou there. Let's bring up the profile. Thank you. So yeah, first thing I wrote down about him, he's an absolute hype man. Watching him, he jumps off tape. He's electric. He's flying around the field everywhere. Played mostly in the cover three, and I think that suits his game with his head to the
hang on. Why is it? Oh, I better not play a video on these every single time. That would be particularly irritating. But anyway, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, so cover three cornerback, mostly playing with his head to the quarterback. I think that suits his game. He seems pretty good at diagnosing, blowing up plays. However, I wouldn't call him a one-trick pony. I saw him line up in man on the outside and in the slot a lot. I've got him number one really because he's my most well-rounded corner. He showed the ability to play in zone and man. And yeah, tackling as well. Best tackling corner in the class for me. There's a play where he absolutely lit up Jaden Daniels, but it wasn't like just throwing his shoulder into him. He form tackled him and picked him up and drove him into the floor. That's a rugby league coach would be proud of that. So didn't really miss any tackles on play either. And I think if you're going to take someone, I don't know where we take it. He'll be taken in the top, maybe top 20, certainly first round. I mean, you got to be able to tackle. So that for me really rounds his game out nicely there. Good size. I thought we looked a little bigger when I saw him play on tape. But yeah, really enjoying him. And I will just add, I did him first. He was my first cornerback I looked at. So once I got the rest in, I did go back because I am aware not many people have him number one. I did go back and there was some all 22 available on him. Recommend watching his tape against LSU. There is not a foot put wrong there at all. He doesn't give up a pass the whole game. He makes every tackle in the game. And that, I did think I may have been going a bit crazy at one point, but I went back and watched that and I thought, no, this is my number one guy. So yeah, really happy with him. And I think he's got a good future playing on Sundays, slot or outside.
Yep. And look, I think you addressed one of the concerns with him, which is the weight at 183 pounds. People will definitely be scared by that, scared off by that at the pro level, but you've sort of addressed that you don't think it impacts his physicality. I think the one thing with Rakestraw Jr. is the long speed, right? A 4.51 timed speed at the combine. That didn't show up for you in any of the film. I haven't watched him in detail, so I don't know.
He improved it a bit. There were talks he was a bit injured in his the combine. He ran a 4.4 at the Mizzou Pro Day, I believe.
Okay.
So that calmed me down a bit in that regard. I mean, he held up against SEC receivers on the outside in all the tape I watched. So I didn't really have any concerns over the play speed there.
Very good. Lovely.
Yeah.
Very nice. Okay, so he's number one on the outside for you. Who have you got number two on the outside?
Probably not a surprise. My number two, I'm going local. My boy from just up the road here in Toledo. It's Quinyon Mitchell. Now, a lot of people do have me number one. Since I've done my rankings, I've gone back and looked. And I have no qualm. It was kind of hard to split these guys. I really put Rakestraw ahead of Quinyon because I felt his game was more well-rounded. Quinyon Mitchell is probably the best pure cover cornerback in the class. He's a guy you can just line up on the outside and stick in man. Nice length on him, 6 foot tall, 195 pounds as well. And that's odd for me because I thought he looked a little skinnier when I saw him play, but showing it's probably a lot of muscle mass, which is very interesting. And excellent size. People love him. The excellent day at the not the Pro Bowl. What's one am I thinking of, Mike? The East West Shrine game.
No, sorry, the Shrine Bowl.
Yeah.
He was Senior Bowl, wasn't he?
Senior Bowl. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, excellent day there. So that calmed a lot of people's fears about him playing against MAC opposition. And I did go back and, very fast. He never really got beat on any deep balls. And his standout game is obviously going to be the 2022 game against Northern Illinois, where he had no fewer than 4 picks in that game, which is just ridiculous. 2 were bad throws, but 2 were good interceptions. And I did manage to watch his All-22 against Marvin Harrison against OSU as well. Had a pretty solid day there. The only thing I would say is and it was annoying. They played him an off man all day against Marvin Harrison, which is kind of I wanted to see him really match up one-on-one and try and get in his face. And he gave up a few catches to Marvin Harrison just in front of him. I didn't want to let him get behind him, but I would have liked to see him gone up and challenged him a bit more there. But I do think, best cover corner in the league, excellent ball skills, really nice on the interceptions and good running after the catch. And as I said before, I really like tackling guys. His run support leaves a little bit to be desired for me. I think they're going to have to work on his tackling technique a bit to shore him up there on the outside where he's probably going to play in the NFL.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I've not seen anything of Quignon other than his combine workout. Obviously, we don't get a lot of Toledo Rockets football over here in the UK, so I haven't seen a lot of this lad. But obviously, the time speed at 4.33 by all accounts has I had a lot of people scrambling back to the tape just to confirm that, because I think he was expected to run in the mid 4.4s, so even quicker than you'd expect, which is always nice. And obviously, that's good frame, 6 foot, 195 pounds, 31-inch arms, maybe slightly on the short side, but if you're sticky in coverage, that's less of an issue. So yeah, no, I think you're very much on the consensus there. Most people have him 1 or 2 in this class. So who have you got? Yeah. I think you've got a third player in this outside tier, haven't you?
I've got 6 on the outside tier.
Oh, man alive. Okay.
6 that I think can play outside. Pure cornerback. So there are some slots in here as well. And then I've got hybrid slot safeties. But yeah, my third guy is going to be just a pure outside guy, and that's going to be a Kool-Aid McKinstry here from Alabama. And
okay, before you get into Kool-Aid, let me just go into this profile thing, because it is. I don't want to stop using them for each player, but they're very irritatingly, this video plays every time and I can't stop it, and it's like shouting over you. Okay, right, Kool-Aid.
That loves video content these days.
Yeah.
All right. Now I will say there's a steep drop off here after these top 3, and I will put Kool-Aid in the top 3 in this class for me. The top 3 guys really stood out to me as being better than anything else I looked at, and I was quite perplexed really to see a lot of people are down on Kool-Aid when I had a look at some of the analyst rankings and mock drafts and stuff. No one really has him in the top round. He's an interesting one because coming into the year, plays for Alabama, everyone was all on him. Like the last few years, he was, the name, the brand for Kool-Aid was a big part in getting him up there. But he had an excellent game as well. Much vaunted prospect, and highly recruited. In the end, he only finished his college career with 2 interceptions, which is bizarre. His pass breakups in 2023 dropped to 7, and he had 15 in 2022. But that's mostly because no one was targeting him on the outside. They just weren't throwing at him. So that's kind of explains why the production may not be there. But then he did have a few interceptions that he dropped, and probably should have hauled them in. So the hands aren't really as good as the other 2 guys I looked at. However, he's just a really fluid player in coverage. He's kind of sticky on guys. I can see him playing zone or man. I don't have a problem with him in either system. I know they like to mix and match there in Alabama, depending on what they're lined up against. So I think he's got the mental wherewithal and the physical traits, and really good field awareness. Covered goes really well. Used the sideline really well. I noticed that on a couple of routes when players were running past him. He kind of shepherded them that way and forced them to go where they didn't want to. So I think he's got a lot of nice nuances to his game, and excellent physicality as well. I mean, there was a play, you probably saw in the Michigan game here. He slammed the Michigan receiver to the floor, Samaj Morgan, I believe it was, in the Rose Bowl defeat. So just a really aggressive tackle, and a lot of his tackling was good throughout. So again, tackling for me, highly rated. pushes him up there for me. The consensus is for me, a lot of his highlights were against kind of meek out of conference opposition that you often see Alabama scheduling in their September kind of run there. A lot of the highlights were from that. Not too many plays against the bigger SEC teams. They also listed him as 6'1", which is quite funny because he's turned out to be 5'11" and a half. So there are a lot of smoke screens here with Kool-Aid. You know, he wasn't targeted a lot, but he didn't get the picks. It's a hard evaluation for me. I do just like the look of him on tape, and I'm on that. I'm going to put him as the third corner.
Fair enough. I had a tough day against AD Mitchell, who we'll talk about when we do our wide receiver episode. I've watched quite a lot of AD, and that was a tough day at the office for him. I think that has maybe pushed people down on him a little bit because AD and Xavier Worthy went off in that game on Terry and Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry. So I think that might be maybe where some people have lost, I don't know, maybe lost some faith in him a little bit. But I'm with you. Yeah. I can't imagine playing for Nick Saban in a man match system for that amount of time. You won't come out with some kind of polish to you. So I'd have thought he'd be a fairly safe end of the first round pick for me. But
I think so. Yeah, that's where I'd have him.
Yeah. All right. Next outside guy then.
Next outside guy is going to be TJ Tampa for me, Mike. I know he's a guy you were quite high on coming into this process as well. I like a cyclone for you there.
I like a throwback cover 3 corner with a lot of size here. But let me get this video. Let me get this video paused, and we'll be away. Lovely. NFL.com. I've not even done a video for him, so that's
wonderful.
Now we're getting into these lower ranked guys. The videos have dried up, so that's good. Go after you.
Yeah, I just love watching this guy play. The first thing I wrote down about him is a thumping athlete. He really likes to tackle and not just in run support as well. In his coverage, he really smashed guys and forced a lot of incompletions that way at the point of catch, which is fun to watch. I do think he's probably a zone cornerback because he doesn't have the elite speed that you want. I can't remember what he ran exactly, but yeah, on tape, the speed didn't show up massively for me. I don't think we have it here.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't have it here.
I'd imagine he'd be a 4.5 guy, maybe mid 4.5 or something. But
he may not have even run at the combine. To be fair, that may be why they don't have it.
Yeah, because,
obviously, it was somebody this size. I could see that being a potential concern if they think he's not going to run quickly, as quick as others. He may not run at all, so that might be why it's not listed here.
I think so. Yeah, but yeah, I like him as an outside. I think he can play outside corner as long as he's in his own system. Got no problems with him there. I think I wrote down like in a Pete Carroll style of defense, I'd love to see this guy maybe shepherding a deep third of the field there, or coming up in run support and kind of moving him around a little bit. He could be a nice Ravens talent as well, kind of maybe one of these in-betweener kind of players. But yeah, really, really enjoyed watching him play. And he's got pretty long arms, I believe. Yeah, 32 and an eighth. So that's not. That did show up on the tape as well. Sometimes his speed had him beaten over the middle, but he was able to claw the balls away at the last minute and bring him up there. Yeah. So yeah, I enjoyed him a lot. He's definitely not as good as the top 3. He's kind of in that next bracket, but he's top of the next bracket for me as a true zone cornerback.
Yeah, you've got Dan Quinn at the top of the second round there with the Washington Commanders, running that Seahawk style of zone defense. I could see TJ Tampa playing very well in a system like that as well. So I think that's the kind of range for him. Early to mid.
I can't see Emmanuel Forbes doing too well in that defense, to be honest. So they probably need to draft a replacement.
Well, and unfortunately for Rakestraw, who you mentioned, that's the comp, right? Is Emmanuel Forbes with that very light frame really struggled last year. So yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I would say he's not as light as Forbes. Forbes is 15 pounds lighter or so.
I'm not saying that. I think that's been a bit exaggerated for Rakestraw, but that is the concern. Okay, so number 5 on the outside for you then, Tom. Who are we on to next?
Yep, so the 5 is probably going to be more of a slot for me, but it's going to be Max Melton out of Rutgers. I really enjoyed watching his tape. So 5'11", A little shorter than some of the other guys we've looked at here. But a nice, good, decent weight in him there, almost 190. And he was a 4-year starter here in Greg Schiano's famed quarters defense up there in New Jersey. Good speed straight off the bat, really popped off on the tape, and good instinctiveness to run routes. I mean, you can kind of tell he's a 4-year starter under a decent coach. He just had a lot of good nous about him, and he was never really out of position when I saw him. Played mostly in the slot. He did have some good corners outside of him, who I believe are going to come out next year as well. So overall, it was a very good secondary. But when he was asked to make plays, he did. Showed good anticipation and often ran routes for receivers to come back and make the picks. I mean, he finished his career with 8 interceptions, which is pretty good. If you're using production to rate a guy, that's a decent amount there for the lad. Tackling very solid. Also blocked 2 punts last year, one that was returned for a touchdown against Michigan. So I like that. I like nice effort plays. Effort plays are something we might talk about with another caller in this class, who I know you've enjoyed, but it is good to see that. He's not just, he's a team guy, I think. He's not just a diva corner. He made some good blocks there. Negatives, he was exposed by the deep ball against Virginia Tech in 2023. Just really beaten for gas over the top there, which is surprising. We see there a 4.39 dash. Maybe that doesn't show up in the play speed because he was mostly using the slot. So that's probably the one concern. But I think as a slot, I'd be pretty happy with him, and I think he can go up against guys in man. I trust him. Or the quarters or cover 2 scheme is probably going to be where he'd be best used. But I think they could, with a bit of work, he could be a decent man coverage, just because he has good instincts and plays the ball pretty well and good ball skills there. So I see it hard. I find it hard to see him slipping out the second round, to be honest. I think someone will fall in love with him, and good IQ, 4-year starter. I think it's a lot of that's in his favor. Solid tackle. Well, so second round grade for me.
I was going to say, Max Melton, you are a Philadelphia Eagle. Yeah. Howie Roseman loves the jumps and the 40.5 in the vertical and then 11.4 in the broad is absolutely exceptional jumping, which suggests explosiveness and twitch in the slot, which is a position the Eagles defense definitely needs. So I could see somebody like that in the middle of the second round. Definitely taking a swing on young Melton there, because that's a hell of a profile that is for a slot for a nickel corner.
Well, he's from Mays Landing, New Jersey. I wonder if he was a young Eagles fan himself there.
Oh, that'd be interesting to know. I mean, I'm definitely going to Google that after this, and I'll bring that knowledge with me to the mock draft if required, because that would be that would he'd certainly, well, he wouldn't go the first round, but anyway, that would endear me to him definitely.
Oh, yeah, for sure. All right, 6th guy off the board, 6 pure cornerback for me is going to be Nate Wiggins, Clemson. Just try and find him there. I can't see.
Oh, he's up high. He's up high for Lance, like 3rd corner overall. Interesting.
Yeah, I disagree with that. He is light. We talk about light players. He's one of the lighter ones here, 173 pounds for Wiggins. Extremely quick, though. I mean, a 4.28 dash. And that really does show up on the tape as well. He's just not really a guy who's going to get beaten over his head, which I think will project him as a good outside cornerback in the pros. He does have a slight dilemma for me, as I wrote down in my notes here. So he struggles a little bit against receivers who are being a bit more physical against him. And also when he has to go across the middle and stuff, he wasn't so good going laterally as he was going directly behind him. I'm sure that can be worked on, but I did have a look at his All-22 against North Carolina, up against Tez Walker, who should be a future NFL receiver himself next year. And Walker was using his hands really well to separate from Wiggins. Wiggins just couldn't really deal with him. He kind of got gashed a bit on that day. And then he did, however, redeem himself. He had a good anticipation pick on a curl route against Tez Walker late in the 4th quarter, so he redeemed himself there. A good pick for him. And he was playing a little more adventurously then, maybe because they had a lead. I don't know, but that was an interesting evaluation there, because he he wasn't really able to shut him down so much, and that did worry me a bit. Not necessarily playing against those caliber receivers all day, every day in the ACC. So that was what I did pay attention to. However, overall, he's got some great effort plays. I mean, you noted a couple of ones where you chase guys down, just show his pure track speed, chase guys down and bunt the balls out of people's hands to save touchdowns and get turnovers. And he's a willing tackler. He hits with his shoulder. No good tackling technique is not good, but yeah, he's not afraid to tackle. So yeah, I'm sure no one in the NFL, I don't know. From what I've seen, no one cares too much about that. I would personally. I'd want to tackle with technique. But yeah, I think he's an injury waiting to happen if he's tackling like that with his 173-pound frame, personally. So some of the better ball skills I've seen overall and projects, I think, yeah, it's tough. When I saw him in man, I wasn't that impressed. You could play him in zone. I think it might be a horses for courses job with him. I can't really project him too much into any type of system. I could see him playing man, but he'd have to probably get a bit more physical with receivers to do that. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see where it goes. It is an interesting one because I don't have too much faith in him, but other people seem higher on him.
Yeah, a lot of people are high on him. Lance Zierlein here is cornerback 3. Same for Dane Brugler as well. I love his effort plays. I mentioned those to you a couple of weeks ago in the process, but the more I've watched him, the more I got concerned about him. The broad jump here is not explosive. The arms aren't very long. The weight and hands are small as well. Actually, the weight as well is a serious issue. People are just gonna, people like the LA Rams will just get you into a bunch of receivers to your side and then just throw toss crack out there at you until you can prove that you can wrap up either a running back or Puka Nacua on a reverse, and they'll just run that down his throat until he can show anybody that he can stop it. And he's going to have to tackle a hell of a lot better than he did on tape to just stop people just lining up and doing that to him all game, to be honest. But so I would agree with your consensus. I wouldn't have him above corner 4, 5, or 6, to be honest, on my projection. So yeah, no, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, well, I mean, interesting because a lot of people are mocking him in the first round. But yeah, he's one of these ones I'd worry about. But let's see, could be proven.
He is mocked to the Eagles more than any other player. Everybody mocks Nate Wiggins to the Eagles, and I've got to say I'm off of that. I'm making this a very Eagles slant here, but that's because the Eagles desperately need defensive backs. So.
Well, it is, yeah. And also with the Eagles missing tackles, he wouldn't be the best player to come to you.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Okay, so before we go on to the nickels only, then where for you does the value come in for a nickel only player? Because obviously you've got outside guys with some flexibility there in all of those guys, really. Apart from Melton, maybe a bit more the other way, more of a nickel with outside flexibility. These are just nickels. If you're just a nickel, do you take a solely a nickel corner in the first 64 picks, first couple of rounds?
Yeah, I would. I could see that value being there in the first round for probably 2 of these guys I'm going to discuss. The first guy probably more so just because his coverage skills are pretty on point and I like him. And a lot of people do have him as an outside corner, but I just like him as a slot just because of his run defense capabilities, maybe play him as a safety as well. And I think sometimes he got exposed a little bit manning up against guys on the outside. So these guys are guys that are going to have their faults, but in the modern day system, if you're playing like a 3-3-5 or something, I would take probably 2 of these guys in the first round who we're going to discuss.
Yeah, no, I think it's becoming a first round position, to be fair. The nickel. The Eagles haven't had one they can rely on with Avonte Maddox being injured, and I've seen the value of that up close. Like especially in the run game, modern run game, you just get it run down your throat if your nickel can't tackle. So they've got to play a bit of linebacker, and a bit of corner, which is a tough skill set.
It is, yeah. We saw the value of Trent McDuffie that Chiefs managed to pick up into the first round as well. I think that's kind of a sweet spot for the slot who can tackle. So number 1 is going to be Terrion Arnold, and I said this might be This might be my most controversial call, actually, because I think a lot of people have him as an outside corner. He's quite high up on your boy Lance's list there.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, let me just get my notes up at him. It's been a while since I've looked at him, goodness.
Well, I mean, you obviously will have gone to him pretty soon in the process because he's universally up in the top 3 for most people.
Yeah, he's yeah. I mean, first thing, I was enamored with his tackling. He's probably up there, joint maybe, or second best tackling corner in this class.
Okay.
Very physical, both with his tackling. He's a smart tackler. He wraps up legs. He doesn't go and deliver knockout blows, which I love. He takes care of himself. He had one where he had the enormous Arkansas quarterback KJ Jefferson, who's one of my favorite players, about 250 pounds. Terrion Arnold just wrapped up his leg and waited for him to fall down. He didn't try and do it. I love that. He didn't try and knock him out because he would have come off second best there. So he showed smartness tackling. In terms of his coverage, that's what everyone wants to know about. Why I have him as a slot is I think he found himself out of position often against some up and under routes. I was watching him trying to go long against receivers, against SEC receivers. He displayed good speed to break up the passes, and that looked favorably on his stat line at the end of his games. But I think he was exposed, and particularly you mentioned McKinstry being exposed against against Texas. I think it was the LSU receivers that did the job on Arnold, but they didn't really target McKinstry too much. He failed to live with them on out routes and corners. He had a good pass breakup against Malik Nabers where he came back and played through the ball. When he was able to stick with him, he was able to be physical and rattle them a bit at the point of contact. But a lot of times he just wasn't with those LSU receivers. So hard to mock him as an outside corner for me from what I've seen there. I can see people having divided opinions, on him. The play speed, yeah, as I've said, looks a little bit of a concern. He had a 4.540 at the combine, I believe, and that won't alleviate the concerns. Yeah, so I don't think he's an outside corner. I think the best comp I have for him, which I'm quite proud of, is the Brian Branch of this draft, one of his Alabama alums. I think he's a nice pick there at the end of the first round if you want a guy you can play at safety or come up and cover guys if you need to in the slot. I think he's really going to suit that kind of position.
Yeah, it's an interesting call. Definitely in that Brian Branch position, I can see that more than just a pure inside nickel receiver. Just because I think you probably have some of that intelligence, some of those awareness on the back end where you wouldn't want to just have him down in the box making tackles all the time. You want him to do, you can play some games with someone like that in coverage, I think, and have him running out to a half field safety or something just to confuse people. So I think that's definitely within his locker. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the 40 time. That I think people were concerned about play speed, and then when he ran 4.5, it's kind of like, can we really leave you out there on an island against against Justin Jefferson or something like that? Like that's just
the LSU boys had fun with him in that game. Yeah. They just toyed with him. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well,
I do think that's a good skill set, and it deserves a first round pick, certainly for what he brings to the table. And he's the best hybrid slot safety that I saw. So the second best I'm going to talk about is Cooper DeJean, an Iowa Hawkeye. Listed as a quarterback here in the mock, which is interesting. Again, divided opinions. A lot of people might see him as a safety. I see him as a hybrid. And let me just bring up my notes.
I'm being shouted at. I'm being shouted at by NFL.com. I forgot to turn the video off. It scared the life out of me. Jeez. Okay, right. Go on. Sorry.
Excellent size here, Mike. Gotta love this. 6'1.5" and over 200 pounds. That's a wonderful size here for any defensive back, and the fact that he can tackle as well, excellent tackler. Really enamored him to me watching him play. A lot of big splash plays. And this was the thing about him on the surface. There's a hell of a lot to like about him. He's kind of like a Swiss Army knife for Iowa. He was electric when he got his hands on the ball. When he caught interceptions. A lot of them were returned for picks. I think he had 3 of 7 interceptions returned for touchdowns, which is ridiculous. Good punt return as well. This could be the thing that mocks him into the first for a lot of people. I think he can return punts and kicks
Yeah.
maybe at that level. So that's interesting.
And with the
And yeah,
changing the rules on the kick return game, that's adding
yeah,
value, which we'll get into on the receiver class as well, because I have factored that into my receiver rankings. Kickoffs are good.
exactly.
Kickoffs could be very fun next year in the NFL. I'm really excited for the new kickoff rule.
Exactly. Yeah. That was one of the highlights of the college year for me when Cooper DeJean had his punt against Minnesota called back, and the Iowa faithful erupted, throwing missiles onto the field. That was a brilliant game. Um, so yeah, he's good, and he used to play receiver in high school in Iowa. Played both sides of the ball, high IQ as you'd expect with a Kirk Ferentz product. So a lot to like off the bat. His tape was some of the funnest I watched. Excellent tackling, never really missed tackles, and just really played with a lot of effort and energy. Dean Deeper, he had his struggles in coverage. His reel against OSU was not pretty. Giving up a nice deep over for a long touchdown. He was about 10 yards off the ball when the receiver caught it. I don't even think that was Harrison. I think that was another receiver he was on. And he generally struggling to live with outside threats in most of the coverage I watched. I mean, I think it was a bit harsh of them manning him up or having him cover half of the field against good receivers. I'm not sure that's his best use case. And I think man coverage is not what a team who wants him to be doing. Maybe across the middle, he'd be better over shorter routes. But I certainly see him in that hybrid role. I'd probably play him as a safety just because his coverage concerns me a little bit watching him. And I think as safety, if he's a guy with his high IQ, you just give him a bit of license to go roam around and cause some trouble. Again, it's kind of an interesting one could be a Ravens style defense where he plays like Kyle Hamilton role. Could be interesting for him.
Beat me to it. Beat me to it. That was going to be my comp.
Yeah.
Smaller body, smaller frame, but
yeah,
more athletic, much more athletic, more range than Kyle Hamilton.
He is. Yeah. And Mike McDonald over at the Seahawks now could be looking at him as well to play around the Seahawks.
That's an interesting one. That is.
Yeah. Maybe they're picking mid-round, but a lot of people are very high on him, so you could see a mid-first round.
Maybe the Chargers if they trade down as well, because they've got the Michigan DC as their DC now, and that's the same defense they had in Baltimore last season. So if the Chargers come back down the board, I could see them taking a Cooper DeJean in the middle of the first for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think in summary, I'm just looking at my notes here. He's a good slot safety hybrid. I think playing him as a robber or rat would be good to utilize his instincts. And he also played quarterback in high school. I'm just having a look now, so that's enjoyable. And the punt returns and kick return quality will bump him up draft boards. So yeah, a very interesting player. I just wouldn't leave him in man coverage.
Yeah, and I think that's people see this different ways, right? It's horses for courses. Some people say, oh, it's a bit of an insult saying that he can't play outside man on man against somebody. But I'm with you definitely, which is, yes, I think he can do that in selected situations, but is that what best utilizes his skill set? And that's, I mean, we've been calling out for, well, I've been looking for Derwin James to get used correctly for his entire NFL career. And just because people can do multiple things doesn't mean you give them one thing to do and just do that. And then on the next play, give them a totally different thing to do. It's why don't you, you need a role for this guy. And for me, I agree. I want his eyes on the football and on the quarterback. I don't want him with his back turned chasing receivers down the field personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, we digress. That was an interesting list. We've got a couple of minutes left here. It's on 2 minutes to be precise. Do you have any?
I just had Mike Sanra still as the third safety slot, but yeah, my notes on him was slight. I know I told you at this point I kind of got a bit fatigued, so I didn't take too many notes on him, but 5'9", I believe, so slightly short. But again, he's an absolute safety / nickel for me. I mean, let's have a look at his 40 time if you can just bring it up there. I don't think it was. Well, it was a 4.47, so he's good. Yeah, he is quick. He used to play receiver as well, and you did see a lot of that. He was kind of anticipating routes and pretty good in coverage. But yeah, that size, I just probably wouldn't play him in man
Great
in the NFL.
jumps, great jumps there in the vert and the broad for someone his size, because he is
Yeah,
only
he's a great
5.
athlete.
Yeah,
Great athlete, good in coverage in his own system, and everyone in Michigan said this guy was the leader of the team. So that's something NFL teams will love when they talk to him. Just the leadership qualities. I mean, I wouldn't take him in the first round.
he does not. He does not. He does not get out of the top half of the second round. There is no way.
No.
NFL teams
People
love
love him.
this guy. NFL teams love this guy.
Yeah, a Michigan Wolverine, a championship winning player. You're right. He'll be a day 2 pick, I'm sure, and nailed on day 2 pick.
Early,
So,
early,
yeah.
early day 2 pick. I think he's an absolute certainty. I've seen a lot of Sanistril. I've watched a lot of tape of him playing defense against quarterback prospects that I've studied this year, and yeah, he's a good player. He's a good player. Yeah. He'll go very high, and I think he'll be a good NFL nickel. I can't see too many weaknesses in this game. Maybe tackling, but
yeah,
exactly. Well, he does thump. He does bring the wood, and he tries. There's a lot of effort. Yeah. He's 180. That's the problem.
Yeah. But yeah, that concludes the list.